UFC 298 is going down on Saturday night. It's a pretty good card with some intriguing matchups and the big UFC events to follow, 299 and 300. They're also expected to bring the heat. So it's time for some UFC talk, and we're going to do it with an excellent journalist covering combat sports for the Daily Mail. Man,
not much, Dexter. How are you? Thank you for having me here.
I am well, glad to have you. Glad to finally meet you in person.
Yes, sir.
Because we've done this thing virtually before, but we finally meet in person, and when I do meet you in person, it's a much different look. You got rid of the hair.
Yes, sir.
I like the buzz cut, though.
Thank you.
What's going on?
Yes, sir. Just want to keep people on their toes. I like to switch things up a bit. So figured it's my first in-studio appearance at SNY. Might as well debut the buzz cut.
Well, debuted, looking well, looking sharp.
Thank you, sir. Same for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We got to do some UFC talk. This is your bag. This is something I know you're passionate about. And the main event, folks, for UFC 298 is Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria with the featherweight title on the line. Now, this is Volkanovski's return to the 145-pound division, Leo, where he's unbeaten. His opponent, undefeated in 14 fights. So I got to ask you this. Does age and experience matter here in terms of an edge? You know, because Volkanovski, 35 years old, Topuria, 27. Who do you like to come out on top in this one?
Yes, sir. I would like to open this up by saying that Ilia Topuria is an absolute stud. However, this is Alexander the Great Volkanovski that we're talking about. And although he is 35 years old, I don't think we have seen him hit his descent yet. So with that being said, people are going to point out how Topuria is undefeated. Meanwhile, Volkanovski got knocked out in his last fight. But Dexter, he took a short notice championship fight in a different division against a guy like Islam Makhachev. So he already was at a disadvantage. And on top of that, he got clipped with a head kick who would have knocked anybody out. But when it comes to the featherweight division, he has been on God mode in recent years, especially with his title run. And although Topuria is younger and undefeated, he's also not as battle-tested as Volkanovski. When you look at Topuria's record, you see that he fought Josh Emmett and Bryce Mitchell, and that would be the top of it, versus Volkanovski, who fought Jose Aldo and Chad Mendes and beat those guys. And he went toe-to-toe 3 times with Max Holloway, and he beat Yair Rodriguez, and then he escaped Brian Ortega submissions. And even in his losing effort to Makhachev in the first fight, he was laughing with Makhachev on his back, you know? So that will tell you just how much of an advantage he has in terms of experience. And so I think that Volkanovski will take this tonight, and what he has to do, if he can continue to move side to side and duck Topuria's long combinations, and he already has the cardio edge. So if he could use his wrestling to pin Topuria on his back, where we've seen him struggle before, and I think he's going to get the finish tonight and stay the champion in featherweight.
So I like that for you because the experience matters more. This is the division he's dominated. And
Yes,
I think the term you used was God mode.
Yes,
We've
sir.
seen him there in that, and so you like him to win again tonight. So that should be a good one for people to watch. That is the main event. Now let's look at a couple of other fights that are on the main card, Leo, because we've got former middleweight champ Robert Whittaker versus ex-title challenger Paulo Costa. And last July, Whittaker lost to current champ Dricus du Plessis. And I have to ask this for Whittaker. Is this a fight that can get him back on track?
Yes, Dexter, absolutely. Like you said, Whittaker is a former champion who won 13 of his last 16 fights. And those 3 losses came twice against Israel Adesanya, who was the former champion, and in his last one came up against
and
du Plessis.
No shame losing to him.
No shame
right.
there. And even so with du Plessis, who ended up becoming the current champion.
Right.
So I believe that with him being the number 3 ranked fighter in this division, it will absolutely put him back on track for the title run, going up against someone like Costa, who only has 2 losses in his career against Adesanya and Marvin Vettori, and is coming off a win against Luke Rockhold. So for Whittaker to come back from a loss, getting finished by du Plessis and beat a guy like Costa, and with the middleweight title becoming like a hot potato in recent fights, changing holders within the last 3 contests, I think he could make a really, really good case right next to Sean Strickland and Adesanya, who's kind of this looming presence in the division.
Yeah, he's always going to be a looming presence
sir.
there for sure. So big fight there for Whittaker. And then next up, we got to talk about welterweights. Geoff Neal and Ian Machado Gary were supposed to face off last August, but now they're going to meet here in UFC 298. Now, Gary has an impressive 13-0 record. When you look at this, is he the favorite in this matchup?
Absolutely. Just in terms of on paper, them as fighters, you know, Gary is 13-0 with 8 finishes. Meanwhile, Geoff Neal is a very respectable veteran. He went on a 7-fight win streak before losing 3 of his last fights 3 of his last 5 fights. So on paper, Gary should have the advantage on this, but however, the question becomes, can he overcome the mental adversity that he's going with? Because in December, he was supposed to fight Vicente Luque, and he pulled out with a sickness in the middle of the controversy that was going on with him and his wife. And it's not proven, but people were speculating that he pulled out because he could not take the mental pressure of going through fight week with all of this bad noise going on around him. So a win over someone like Jeff Neal, if he could overcome this, will really set him on this star track that the UFC is trying to put him in and put him to 14-0. So it's just a matter of, can he handle this mental pressure?
Yeah, we'll see. Handle it. Big fight time tonight on UFC 298. Last thing I want to do is look ahead, folks, for a bit, because UFC 299, Leo, and 300 later this year. What matchups for those events that at least have been reported are you most excited about?
Oh man, Dexter, where do we begin? You know, with 299, you got Sean O'Malley coming up against Chito Vera in the rematch and his first title defense at featherweight. And then UFC 300, who already has Max Holloway fighting Justin Gaethje for the BMF title and Arman Tsarukyan fighting Charles Oliveira. And the main event hasn't even been announced for that yet. But when it comes to the one fight that I'm looking most forward to, we go back to the lightweight division, and I mentioned this guy last time I was on the program, but Benoit Saint-Denis lit up Madison Square Garden with a knockout at UFC 295, and on 299 next month, he is going to fight Dustin Poirier. And, you know, Poirier is a former interim champion. He's fought for the undisputed belt twice, and he has 2 wins over McGregor, wins over Holloway, wins over Gaethje. You know, and it's a big jump for Saint-Denis to go be the number 12 fighter fighting number 3. And besides the fighters that are involved and this promising to be an absolute slugfest, it's the stakes that makes it interesting. Because if Poirier loses to number 12, his stock is just going to go down big time, you know, being one of the biggest stars. Meanwhile, for Saint-Denis, it's just going to launch him into new heights if he gets a win over a name like Dustin Poirier. So with that being said, I think Poirier still has the edge. I think people are wrong for considering him the underdog on this one, but it's going to be an incredible bloodbath. And, you know, we're MMA fans. We love it when people slug it out.
So MMA fans love the bloodbath.
Yes, sir. So with that being said, that's one fight in particular that I am looking forward to.
That's good. Listen, if you're a fan of the mixed martial arts, you're a fan of UFC, a lot of exciting stuff coming up over the next couple of months. Keep making these fights that people want to see.
Yes, sir.
And one of the best people covering it, that is Leocciano Callao, writing for the Daily Mail. Check out his work. Leo, glad to have you up here to talk some UFC, some combat sports with me. Great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
for
having me. Yes, sir. Absolutely. We'll be back.
Not too long, because if it's too long, the next time I see you, the hair will be long again. So we got to make sure it's not that long.
Maybe it'll be a mohawk next time. You know?
We never know. Keep them on your toes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate you, Leo. Thank you,
sir. Conversation. No, that was fun.